To say a very warm welcome to you all here. I'm Jackie Ashley, once a journalist, still a bit of a sometime journalist, but now president of Lucy Cavendish College, the best college here at the University of Cambridge. So I now live here. It is my great privilege to introduce Cressida Dick for many reasons, but above all because she is the first female commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, which is a cause dear to my heart. Now, Cressida is going to be talking about relations between the police and the media. As we all know, the police need the media and the media need the police, but relations are not always harmonious. So it's how do you manage that? Cressida has spoken out on many things recently, from cuts in police funding, yes, they're popular there with the press, to locking up young thugs, popular with the popular press, as they dubbed it. So we're very much looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Cressida. After the talk, there will be a chance for some questions when I'm going to ask you to say who you are and we'll have some questions. And then after that, we'll get on to our session on reporting terrorism, where there's some very interesting questions to discuss there as well. So for now, Cressida, without more ado, I'll say over to you. Thank you
very much. Thank you, Jackie. Well, as you say, rather hard to follow what has just gone before. I know some of you, I noticed, had some alcohol at lunchtime and large puddings and large carbohydrate-filled elements. So hopefully the bugler, who, if she's still listening, I thought it was I was involved in all sorts of remembrance events this weekend, and that was one of the best buglings I have ever heard. Absolutely astonishing, Lizzie. A great joy to be in Cambridge, somewhere close to my heart, even if I only managed to glimpse it coming in and out. And great to be here with the Society of Editors. I did want to start, though, just by mentioning the fact that some of you may have seen this, but to let everybody know of a certain generation, I'm sure you will remember, the great Lord Imbert, our commissioner in the 90s, has died, sadly, this morning. He was truly an amazing police officer, spent a very large proportion of his service actually as a police constable. And amazing encourager of people and of successive generations, stayed very much in touch with London life. He was a Lord Lieutenant, and with the Met right to his dying day. But he was also a police reformer and the kindest man in the world, but somebody who wanted the police to improve all the time. And I think he did a lot to improve our relationships with our public. I should also, I suppose, congratulate Ian Murray on appointment as Executive Director. We know that Bob's shoes are very big ones to step into. That is, of course, a figure of speech. We don't have a secret police list mapping out the shoe sizes of all the British press, despite what you might believe. And Ian McGregor, I hope you do enjoy your one-year term as President. I aim to last a little longer than that. It's a highly scrutinised role, who knows? I'm already halfway there, but it certainly depends a lot on what appears in the papers. At my first press briefing, which was back in April, just after I was appointed, I made it very clear that I wanted to reset the relationship with our media, and that's why I had no hesitation at all when invited to come and speak here. I do believe that it's very important that everyone, from me, the Commissioner, to the local ward officer in Camberwell Green, has a constructive, confident, professional, honest relationship with journalists. It's not just in our best interest, but it's in the best interest of everyone in London, our public. They are the people who we police, we serve, and who read your copy. And I do believe that you are an absolutely essential component of our relationship with the public. I thought it would be useful perhaps to start by reflecting a little bit on my first 6 months in the job, give you some feel for my priorities, show how I think our relationship plays into that, and then talk about some practical things I want to do, and maybe end with a small challenge to all of you. My first day back in April in the job was tough. It was the funeral of PC Keith Palmer, killed in the Westminster Bridge attack. And as you are all very well aware, since then in London we have been faced with Borough Market, with London Bridge, with Finsbury Park, with Parsons Green, with the Grenfell fire. And you are also aware, more than aware, of what our colleagues in Manchester faced with the hideous concert attack there. And I believe that the values, the qualities of our officers and staff in the Met have really spoken for themselves this year. And thank you for all you have done in doing, I think, a fantastic job at conveying them and who they are. As a police officer, I know that each and every day, each and every hour, officers will be running into danger as others run away. It's what they do. As I speak, there will be an officer somewhere, probably not far from here, certainly in London, who's facing down extreme violence. Another who is showing the most extraordinary levels of humanity and care to the most vulnerable in our society. And I think that this year's horrific events have brought that into sharp focus to the public. And I hope you have seen, those who have observed me at all, my pride in what they've done. But I have observed that that is truly matched by the public's increased understanding, their very great gratitude. And all our surveys and anecdote do show that public confidence in their police is very high. In terms of communication, and I was discussing this with Ian before, I think this summer has shown really clearly how important the work that we did in partnership with the Society of Editors in preparing for major events has been. And this has happened particularly over the last year. So we wanted you guys to understand our response, our concerns, our constraints, and we wanted to listen to you and bring your issues into our plannings as we plan for major events. The two major exercises that the Met ran with the media and subsequently the debrief we've hosted at Scotland Yard do, I think, show how a trusting and constructive relationship can work at its best. So what are my challenges 6 months in? As Jackie has said, of course, the terrorism threat here, overseas, online. And I'm very pleased to be able to act as Mark Rowley's warm-up act. He will give you more detail about that. But I do know for you that reporting on terrorism, from whatever your organisation, your perspective, it's a fine line, it's a balancing act. You must inform but not glorify. You don't want to be providing the platform that this kind of evil craves. You must investigate, but not in a dangerous way, not in a way which disrupts the efforts of the police and the security services. You must comment, but not in a way that creates excessive fear and multiplies the terror. And we in the police, in the agencies, in security generally, have a duty to help you balance those issues. And I do hope that those of you that were involved, the briefings that you saw, for example, from Mark following the Manchester attack and our commander in London, Dean Hayden, following London Bridge, have helped. The rise in crime, and especially serious violence, is another key area for me. 2 weeks ago, I led a crime reporters briefing explaining what we know about the issues, what we're doing. We need to be upfront about it. We are redoubling our efforts and our public are getting involved in a fight back. But the issues are complex. They can't be solved by the police alone. And equally, I do think we need context. London is essentially a safe global city. And none of us, I think, should be unfairly putting our great capital city down. The press play a vital part in this. One example, thanks to a brilliant press photo, appeals through traditional and social media, good old-fashioned detective work, we put behind bars a gang of moped criminals who did their best to knock over the UK's most prominent chancellor turned editor. Every day we see crimes solved because of media attention, multiple crimes solved because of media attention. And that's just one reason why the relationship is so important. I've been crystal clear that bearing down on violence in all its forms, from terrorism through to sexual offending, domestic violence, is my #1 priority. In recent months, we have deployed what can only be described, I think, as a Herculean effort in tactics and resources to suppress violence on the streets, knives, guns, mopeds. We are, I'm pleased to say, stemming the tide, but it's very early days and I'm not at all complacent. There are many other challenges. I won't bore you with all my challenges, what's in my in tray, but one I will highlight now is money. Budgets are tight. We're policing a fast-changing, tech-enabled society. We have to make choices. We are closing front counters, providing oven-ready campaigns for local papers. We need to spell out clearly the reasons for that. Some of ours, for example, have single figures of people visiting those front counters in a week. We have to prioritise the crimes we respond to. These are difficult choices to explain to the public and the press, and often these tough decisions create easy headlines, acerbic comment. I'm not here to complain about the coverage at all. These are important issues for Londoners, and I absolutely think our decisions should be scrutinised. But I do ask you to look behind the headlines where you can, look at what we are facing, and understand that our simple priority remains the same as the year we were formed, 1829. We're there to keep the peace, we're there to prevent crime, where we can't, bring people to justice, support victims. And we're doing all of this in extraordinary, unprecedented times. Put another way, I imagine you face impossibly difficult decisions in your newsrooms every day. What stories to cover, where and when to send a journalist, what stories not to cover because the resource is simply not there. Constantly prioritising. Put yourselves in the position of my officers, the duty officer, the person in charge on any borough in London at any time of the day or night. They have to decide where they're going to deploy a team. The street fight, the domestic assault, historic damage to a car, a stabbing. That's what they do. Sometimes people won't like the decisions we have to make. The police service is often the service of last resort. Increasingly, it seems to us we are being called upon to be a first resort, providing services that we may not be skilled for, that arguably are not in line with our core purpose. And it's my job to stand up and explain what we can do, what we won't do, and what the consequences are of shrinking budgets and extra demand. That, I know, can mean critical headlines, even angry columnists, but I'm going to be honest with the public about our service, and I won't promise something that won't be delivered just so I could get a good press, obviously. As you can see, just a taste of the first 6 months, all the challenges we're facing have very strong connections to our relationship with the media. And as I said at the outset, I do want to reset that relationship, and I do believe that this is happening. Speaking to my officers, they have more confidence in their dealings with the media. We are providing more information on the big issues, providing dozens of media facilities every week, encouraging our local officers to speak directly to their local media. In London, of course, and I'm sure it's true nationally, we have seen some local papers close at a worrying rate. I think that's sad for our communities and, of course, devastating for the people employed in journalism there. You'll be aware that the police have a huge reach, the Met in particular, through our own social media channels and hyper-local conversations. But I don't see that as in any way in competition with the media. We, of course, have to be where the conversations are, where the public are looking for their information, but I do think that that can sit alongside quality journalism, including local journalism, and I have absolutely no desire to replace that at all. As you have difficult judgments to make in what you publish, we have to make judgments on what we're making public within the umbrella of being open and accountable. Of course, the public interest is a very powerful phrase, and we will always be mindful of it. However, as has famously been said, what is of interest to the public is not necessarily the same as public interest. And as you'll be very well aware, the public don't expect the Met to disregard our responsibility to the information we hold, simply because it might be interesting. We have to be accurate, we have to be factual, we have to be objective, whilst being speedy and compassionate. Quite rightly, the Society of Editors stands for journalistic freedom. Let us be clear for debate, but I suspect, compared to nearly all of the world, the UK police are extremely accountable, extremely scrutinised, and extremely transparent. But that absolutely doesn't give us an excuse to say, don't challenge us. As a citizen, I so don't want media freedom to be curbed. And if we are getting the balance wrong, we should be held to account. I wanted to try and get through the speech without mentioning Leveson, but I can't, just did. I do think, though, since then, that right now we have much more integrity and better foundations for the relationship between the police and the media. And those foundations are what the public would expect. I don't think the public could accept things staying as they were. I won't apologise for Operation Elvedon. Corrupt police officers, other corrupt public officials were locked up. They were taking money for information. And from my point of view, that's a good result. Whilst an officer was dealing with the horrific death of someone, his colleague's priority was to provide a newspaper with personal details of that victim and exactly what happened. It's not right. I also know, of course, that journalists were charged and then cleared, and that caused a great deal of anger. I ask now only that we try to move on, and that we have clarity, and that we've learnt lessons on all sides. I'm going to be transparent in my relationship with the press. The public expect it. But one of the things that has concerned me coming back into the Met is that relationships with journalists in some police organisations look as though they are being categorised in the same way as a relationship with a criminal. And I think that sends out completely the wrong message and destroys confidence on all sides. So you have my word that that won't be happening in the Met. What can I offer you? Firstly, and most importantly, I'm prepared to set the tone. I'm going to encourage my force to be open, as I've said, to be as transparent as possible within professional boundaries. I will listen to criticism. I'll listen to new ideas. The Met I lead, I want to be very outward-facing. I want it to be confident, not arrogant, humble indeed. Secondly, it's in our interest and yours that we provide content that engages your readers and gives us all the satisfaction of catching criminals and helping crime to be prevented. Thirdly, more tactically, I will guarantee a senior officer at a minimum of 4 industry-wide events a year to provide context and understanding of a policing issue and to listen to you. And we'll work with the society to achieve this. Fourthly, we will arrange at least one media police training exercise, joint exercise a year, so we can begin to share our mental models of how we work and what would be required. And finally, I'll guarantee every newly qualified NCTJ reporter on a local London newspaper the opportunity to come out with one of our borough response teams on a busy night shift. Small practical steps, but I hope ultimately they reflect a positive intent. I most certainly have positive intent, and you may all have other ideas of what I and we can do. From you, I ask, I hope not too much, fairness and respect to the officers and staff who put their lives in keeping London safe. Ultimately, that means they have trust and confidence in you. Secondly, I'd like you as executives, journalists and citizens to look at how you can prevent crime before it happens, how you can mobilise your viewers and your readers to help the police not expect us to do everything for them, to lock up the mopeds that you ride to work, to think of creative ways of providing crime prevention advice, to involve the police as soon as possible in any criminal behaviour. I should put that differently. Involve the police as soon as possible in any criminal behaviour you become aware of. Make sure all your reporters know what their responsibility is to safeguarding the most vulnerable, even above getting a story. I think this is a time where policing can really mobilise the communities, the public that we serve, and I will be endeavouring to do that over the next months and years, and I really do think that the media can help a lot with that. Finally, though, I do ask you to continue holding us to account. The public deserve that. That's your job. I really love policing, as I expect you will have seen. I'm utterly passionate about it, in the way I imagine many of you are utterly passionate about journalism. You love it, warts and all. And I'm very proud to lead an infinitely more professional, infinitely more diverse, infinitely more accountable, humane, open police service than the one I joined in the 1980s. I'm fully aware that increased transparency and scrutiny doesn't always result in increased confidence. That's a philosophical question that we could debate. But it does raise standards. And in a democracy like ours, it has to be a central part of how we police for and with our public. And if the scrutiny and accountability is fair, then obviously we in the police have absolutely nothing to fear from it. The public, I think, need to know and understand their police better. And that's like painting the Forth Road Bridge. We have to keep advocating and explaining. We so need the public's support to do our job, to get evidence, to get intelligence, to be able to do our observation points, to give us our legitimacy as we take forceful action, and to put bad people behind bars. Journalists and police officers, I think, are often working towards the same goals. Both want to investigate those intent on harm. They want to expose bullies. They want to expose the harm that there is and bring it to an end. Both journalists and police people want to work for those who on their own would be powerless and vulnerable. Both, perhaps in slightly different ways, in different circumstances, want to get to the truth. So, Ian, your theme for this conference is fighting for real news. In the police, we're not at all short of news, but moving forward, I would really like us to stop the fighting. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to the questions.